Hi, I'm Gohar Vardanyan, and I'm here with another etude for the Guitar Etude series. Today we have etude number 4 by Matteo Carcassi from his 25 Progressive Studies. I like to use this etude whenever I'm trying to have the student work on slurs with the pinky, but I want to supplement the exercises that he or she would be doing with something a little bit more musical. And in the previous videos, I have done a video on etude number 10 by Carcassi, which is really similar in terms of just like even the beginning. The number 10 goes something like this, and this one starts. So technically you're doing exactly the same thing. I find number 10 to be in some ways easier than number 4 because this one has a few more jumps that are pretty far distances apart. But nevertheless, you can also give a shot to this one and see how it suits you. Now, just to cover my basics for the slurs, number 1 thing to pay attention to, so it doesn't sound like this. Very easy to slip into that habit of kind of swinging it, and that mostly comes from lack of control of the pinky or the weakness of the finger, so you really have to concentrate to make sure it sounds like a triplet. So if anything, it should feel like you're holding on to the pinky longer than you should, and then ultimately at the end it'll sound even. Sometimes you have the third finger as a slur. So that way it's even, because it really doesn't matter if you're playing a slur or you're not playing a slur. The notes are, that's the rhythm. It's not really, so when you're doing a slur, it shouldn't really influence the rhythm. Now that aside, that's going to be like an umbrella comment for every slur you ever play, unless the rhythm is differently written. In this case, I'd like to rather talk about the shifts that you have. Some of them are larger than others. So just to quickly go through the A section, which doesn't really have too many big shifts, but I like to make sure that if there is a common finger between two chords, I like to use that as a guide finger. What I mean is, like, for example, right in the beginning, between this chord and the next chord, my first finger is going to have the first string. The only thing is I have to change the fret. So I will keep it on a string and I will glide it. It makes your life so much easier to have contact with the fretboard and not to look for every chord from 0. Now in this case I don't have anything, I do have to shift up, but it's close enough where I can do that. No shift here either. either, no guide finger, but also you're very, very close. Here I don't really have a shift, but I'm going to aim for this first because that's the first note I'm going to play. So from here, and then here this is a little bit more difficult because you do have to flip them. So that's something you might have to practice. From here to here, even though it's a larger shift in terms of the positions, you're going from 7 to 2, but the shape of your hand, if you don't do anything weird to it, is the same. So going from here, all you have to do is just take that and move it here. So you're going across strings, but if you don't undo it on the way there, it shouldn't be too hard to find. You just have to not miss the fret. And then here there's a common finger, so I'm going to slide this. And then here, even though that's a pretty large shift and there isn't really common guide, you can use something as a guide finger, but it won't go in the same place. Because if you do, you'll hear this too much. So if I do this, and I slide my second finger ahead of time to the A, right? It's going to be more difficult to avoid this glissando. So what I do is I don't use it as a guide, really, and I aim for this first. But I try to keep my hand as close to the fretboard as possible. On the way back, however, during the open string, I use my second finger and glide on the string. I found that to be a little bit easier. The other thing that happens after you've trained your hands to sort of sync together and have your left hand place the finger that you will be playing first in the right hand. If I did this, I want to play this. Instead, I need to play this. So I found it to be more reliable if I did aim for this first. And it was cleaner. Now in the second half, the beginning part is okay. This is all okay. Here, the second finger is my guide. This sometimes is awkward for people to land on because it's the weaker half of the hand and there is no first finger. But if you use your second finger, you're gliding with the second finger, but you're really aiming for the third finger. Same thing here. I don't really have a guide finger, but I'm going to try to keep my hand close and aim for the 3. Now here, depending on the edition that you have, mine tells me to do this with the 4th finger here. So from here, I found that to be more difficult. Instead, I keep this the same. So from here, while I do that pattern, my second finger extends and hovers over the 5th string. And then I basically have the next chord. I just need to move to the right fret. So I like to keep 1 and 3 down and not switch to 4. And then between here, I have my first finger as a guide, and then second finger. So that should be relatively okay. You still have to practice it, especially if you're an intermediate player. Those shifts are going to be pretty long distance to travel. Now in the second half of the second half, so I'm in the V section, but I'm in the second half of it, you have pretty large jumps you have to do. So this, I use my first finger as a guide, but I aim for this. Now here again, my first finger is going to be my guide. This is going to be probably the hardest because you do have to change vertical positioning, sort of. You're here and then all of a sudden you have to be like that, but also over here. So but what I'm doing is I'm doing that in the air. So I'm not gonna get here and then start scrambling for which strings I need. What happens is while I'm here, while I'm traveling up in the middle there, I'm going to change the shape of my hand. So by the time I get to the 12th fret, I'm already in the shape that is required for the next chord. And then back. So in this case, my second finger is going to be my guide, and I'm just going to slide all the way to the 2nd fret. And that's going to help me while I'm here. While I travel, I'm going to also rotate my wrist. so that I land in this position. These are two different hand positions. I'm not going to land like this really here. I'm going to be here. So from here, during the travel, I fix it. So here again, you have the guide here. And as you see, my first finger is already over the 5th string because it's going to be on a 5th string here. So again, I'm not going to come here and then look for it. I'm going to do it ahead of time. So here. As much as you can prepare ahead of time, it's going to save you a lot of missed notes. So now here I don't really have a guide finger, but the good thing is that this is a pretty standard kind of chord, so even though you're going to jump, it's going to be some practice that's required, but especially squishing all the fingers into the same fret. So in short, what you'll have to do is every single large shift that you have, or any shift that you have trouble with, analyze if there is anything in common between the two chords. If there is, that's good news because it'll make your life easier if you use the guide fingers. And if there isn't, and you do have to shift, see if you can do it while you're moving. So again, you're being prepared. So by the time you get there, you have everything you need to just basically land and not have to get to the fret and then think, oh, which string was going to be with what finger. So think ahead. And every shift you might have to practice individually back and forth so that you get used to it. So I hope this is a bit helpful. I know I haven't been making these videos every single week. It takes a lot of time, and between practicing and learning kind of these etudes, it takes a while. So, but hopefully in the fall, I'll be able to get back into a more regular schedule. In the meanwhile, for those of you who do follow me on Instagram, I mostly post like short practice videos, exercise videos over there, like less formal, less produced. It's definitely just done on my iPad. So if you are interested, you can follow me there. I will put the link in the description box and on the video. So I will see you there for the in-between sort of more casual videos, and I hope to make another official etude video soon. Thank you so much for watching.